Okay, so I got a little ahead of myself on something, and I'm going to try something a little different. Um, and what that means is that we're going to have to go back and delete some constraints that we put in. So if you remember, I had gone to this bind section here, and when I was doing a bind, I had gone to the end of my clavicle binds here, and using these, I had constrained my FK and IK sections to this constraint. So these constraints were put into place. And then this constraint is for my joints. So the point constraints mean that these joints follow the body. I'm actually going to delete these point constraints for a reason. And that reason is probably going to break the living crap out of our rigs right now. But don't worry, because we can fix it. So I'm going to delete this constraint here, which should, this is my FK. I'm going to take my IK and do the same, point constraints, and delete them. And it's only these that I'm removing are my point constraints right now. Point constraint on that one as well. And the reason I'm doing that is so that when I move them, my joints still stay in place. Now, the reason that I'm doing that is that I need to actually constrain these so that when I move an object, it moves the bind. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to first start with my shoulders. And I'm going to choose my FK shoulder and my IK shoulder for the right side, but my FK and IK shoulders. And then I'm going to go into my bind shoulder. And I'm going to select my bind shoulders last. And I'm going to create a parent constraint for both of these at the same time. And I'm going to hit apply. Now, what this does is that this should give me a weight on my bind shoulder that shows two weighted constraints here. So I've got an FK and an IK shoulder, so that now when I rotate this, it rotates part of the way. And the reason that it does that is that this translates between half the weight between each object. So it allows me to start creating my FK-IK constraint, my switch. So I can do set-driven keys to switch the weight between the two. So I'm going to do the same here with my elbow bind. So I'm going to select my elbow FK and my IK elbow and my elbow bind together, and then I'm going to hit apply and constrain my object. So again, I get two weighted controls so that if I select this control, you get this bend that moves, and my hand and wrist now follow along with this. Before, if I look at the other side without that constraint, I wasn't getting that following. So going back, I'm going to do this to the other side now. I select my FK shoulder and my IK shoulder, and then my bind shoulder last, and I parent constraint the entire thing. And then I'm going to go do the same thing with my IK elbow and my FK elbow, and then my elbow bind, and apply that as well. And that creates this weighted constraint here on my bind that I can now set up for my FK-IK switch. So my FK-IK switch is going to bring us into a new window called set-driven key. So I go under Windows, Animation, Editors. Is it General Editors now? No, wait. I need to switch to Animation. and I need to go to keys, and I go down here from keys to set driven key. And I'm going to hit set. And this is going to bring up this window where I'm going to need a driver. And the driver is going to be this control. So for my left side, I'm going to hit down at the bottom here with this control selected, load driver. And what I've got here is my FK-IK switch. And if you remember when we set these up, we had an FK and an IK option. Right now I'm going to set up my IK option. So my driven that I'm going to have driven in here is first I'm going to go to my bind joint. So I'm going to move this over here. And I'm going to select my left bind joint for my shoulder. And I'm going to load driven. And one of the things I need to make sure that I have here is these sections. So I'm going to load driven again for my bind parent and make sure that these are loaded. Load. It's supposed to be loading in my constraint. Oh, that's what I need to load. Not this. This. My parent constraint for my shoulder. That gives me everything I need. So this gives me my FK and IK shoulders weights. So with this visible, since I'm doing my IK, and I need to do it on the right side, so not my left. So it's this. I need to select my left FK and turn that to 0. And this I can leave at 1. And so with these all selected, I hit key. And the next thing I do is I move down to my shoulder section here and I hit key again. What that does is it puts a key on the switch so that if it's set at IK, my IK weight is set to 1. So right now, since it's set to 1 on my IK, only my IK should be working. Did I load the wrong side again? Yes. So I'm going to undo that because I'm still in this. Really? Right elbow? Left elbow? Did I have another bind selected when I did this? Right? Low driven. Low driven. That's right. So let me double check to make sure that my keys are working, which they're not. So I'm going to back this up quite a bit. So let's actually break these constraints for now and redo them. Because I'm getting some weird controls. This should not be controlling this section. So let's go to my parent constraint for my shoulder and my elbow and delete these. And then I must have had my elbow selected here. On my parent for these, so I'm going to delete those as well. And now, yeah, so that's been fixed. That's been fixed. I'm going to redo these binds. So again, as I go through these, I'm going to make sure, and it's really important that you make sure that you're selecting the right objects, and only those objects, as you just saw. So IK shoulder, FK shoulder, and I'm looking for my bind, not that one, right, right, that, and then I go into my parent and maintain my offset and hit apply, and then do the same for my elbow like this and hit apply so that these, as they move, yeah, that looks horrible, but as I rotate, I get this partial rotation, which is what I want. But it's not affecting the others. Although that breaks pretty bad right there. So I am getting that on my bind, right? So I think maybe my point constraint that's in here that we had done before at the wrist end, that's correct. That is correct. So let's try this one more time. So my point constraint, parent constraint. Forgive me as I go through this. It's really important that you get this right. So I managed to get it right, I think, on this side. So FK shoulder, IK shoulder, shoulder bind, and parent, FK elbow, IK elbow, elbow bind, and apply. So now when I select this, this works. When I select this, this works. Excuse me. So now I need to go back to my right and delete my constraints here and make sure that these are also gone. So for my bind, delete those and double check that these controls don't move that these controls, whoops, don't move that. Let's try this once more. So left shoulder, or right shoulder elbow, and FK shoulder, and the FK bind, and apply, so that if I select this and rotate, that's what I want. And now do the elbow, so that I've got elbow IK, elbow FK, bind, and hit apply. So now this should work. This should work. It still breaks. And I don't get that kind of break on this. So I'm going to double check this by seeing if it's just something wrong with my IK handle. And the way I'm going to check this is I'm going to go to my parent constraint on my bind, and I'm going to look at my shoulder, and I'm going to look at my FK, and I'm going to turn these to 0. And I'm going to do the same on my elbow constraint, and I'm going to turn that to 0 as well. So that with the weight maxed out, yeah, this works, and that's what I want. I'm going to go back to my shoulder bind, parent constraint on both of these. I'm going to turn the weight of these to 0 on my IK, and I'm going to test it out on my FK now, so that when I select my FK control, that works, and I select this, that works. So, and if I select both controls and move them, they work the way I want. So it's really just an interpretation between these two, and it's the constraints causing the issue. There's nothing really wrong here. It's going to be taken care of as soon as we finish setting up our FK-IK switch. So in order to make sure that that works, what I'm going to do is go back to my parent constraints for my elbow and my shoulder and make sure that my elbow is on for my IK as well. So I want everything on when I start. Now I'm going to go back into my set-driven key, and I'm going to load the driver, which is my right IK switch, since I'm already on the right side. And I'm going to select my driven, which if I select more than one at a time, I have my shoulder bind parent constraints and my elbow bind parent constraints. If I select two of these at the same time and hit load driven, both of these come in the menu, I can switch between them. So I'm going to do these all at once. I'm going to select my FK switch and my FK switch and make sure that these are set to IK. And then I'm going to go to my shoulder bind parent and I'm going to go to my IK shoulder and make sure that that is set to 1 and that the FK is set to 0, and I'm going to hit key. And then I'm going to go to the FK shoulder and I'm going to hit key. And you'll notice that I get a keyframe that turns blue right here. I'm going to go to my elbow bind parent and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make sure that my elbow IK is set to 1 and my FK is turned off, so I set to 0, which is turning the weight of that constraint off. And I'm going to hit key. And I'm going to do the same thing here since it's already set, and I'm going to key that as well. Now, with this FK-IK switch already set, I am actually going to go in here and select this first, and then select my IK switch, and I'm going to turn this to FK. And now I'm going to go back to my shoulder bind position here, and I'm going to zero out my shoulders IK and turn on my shoulders FK. And with that selected, I'm going to hit key. And then I'm going to go down to my shoulder FK here, and I'm going to hit key. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my elbow, turning my IK off and my FK on, and select that control here and hit key. And then the last part, I'm going to also hit key. So I've got a key on everything. Now, when I select this and move it, you'll notice that these move, but nothing happens. So the hand doesn't move with it. I'm not moving my bind, I'm only moving this section. And that is because currently I am set to FK. If I switch to IK and select this control, it moves my hand. But my IK controls, they stay in place. So if I switch this back to FK and I switch and select my FK controls, my FK object moves just like I want. So now what I want to have happen is that when I have that switch move, I want them to turn on and off. So for that, I use the same thing, but I'm going to use the joints visibility, and I'm going to use the control visibility, and I'm going to turn those on and off with the same set driven key. So with this being driven, I'm going to select all of my controls, and I'm going to select the two joints, the joint chains for my FK elbow and my IK elbow, or my IK shoulder, sorry, not my elbow, and my FK shoulder. And I'm going to go with load driven. And I've got several options loaded in here. So now I'm just going to do just the visibility. And right now I need to make sure that my FK switch is set to on. So right now we're in FK mode. So I'm going to go with my FK control for my visibility and make sure that that stays on. And I'm going to key. And I'm going to do the same thing for my FK elbow. Select my visibility and hit key. And I'm going to choose my FK shoulder joint. And again, choose my visibility and hit key so that everything is on right now. My IK sections, on the other hand, I'm going to turn these off. So my visibility I'm going to set to 0 or off. And my IK shoulder joint, I'm going to set my visibility to off. And with that set and selected, I'm going to key that there. And I'm going to do the same thing here and key it so that my visibility is off. And then I'm going to switch to IK currently. And now I have to go back in and change everything here. So my visibility for my IK, my FK controls, I will turn off. My visibility for my shoulder control is off. The visibility on these, I'm going to turn on. So I'm basically reversing everything I've just done. And my right IK shoulder, I'm going to turn off. And now I'm going to go through and make sure that these are ready and key them. So that I've gone through, and once that last one is done and it's keyed, now you can see that no blue joints are left behind. I can turn my switch on and off. No red joints are going to be left behind. And that's it. And I can see this handle here that's there, and I'm just going to right now take that and select my visibility and turn that off, because I don't need to have access to that. But as you can see, now I've got my switch, and I can switch back to it, and my hand pops back into place. But I have this control now, and I have all of these, and for whatever reason, these are having transformations. And that gives me that control. Any questions on this so far? Yeah.
The wrist is supposed to be constrained to both arms.
This wrist control?
Yeah, the wrist joint.
The wrist joints. By constraining the elbows and the wrists in the, setting up the FK-IK constraint that I had done earlier and constraining it that way, those now get driven. They're driving the bind. And since it's already constrained to the bind pose, it's moving it with it that way. So what I did is I took this bind, the shoulder bind, and I had chosen to bind these joints, or to constrain these joints. So I have my right shoulder. Let's take a look at it here. So I have my left FK shoulder and my left IK shoulder, and I chose my bind here, and I just parent constrained that to my bind and maintained offset. And then I did the same thing with my elbow here, and I parented the group that way. And that gave me these two constraints for the weight, so that those two together, if I select a control, drive that, which is why you get this blended between the two, because it's sharing the weight between each one. And what we're doing now is setting up a set-driven key that will drive each one of these into this. So in order to make this work, we load our driver, which is our left set-driven key, and our left switch. And we make sure this is set for IK first. And did I set that IK, FK correctly? Yes. Okay, so right now I'm making this set for IK first. And I need to load driven the control parts that I'm going to drive. So right now, those parts that I need to drive are my weight for my constraints. So those two constraints that I created are here. So I have my elbow parent constraints. These are what I'm looking for on my bind, and I load driven. And I have these two constraints that I can work from. And they're weighted such so that there's the elbow controls here, or the weights on these shoulders. There's two of them, and this is my FK and my IK weights. And what I'm doing here is I'm going through this constraint, and I'm making sure that if I'm in IK mode for my constraint here, which is what I'm at, I go into my constraints, and I make sure that the FK has no weight, and that the weight on the IK is all the way on. And then I key it, just like that. And then I go to this shoulder weight here, and I make sure that that is set as well. So both of these have a key at the same time on my switch. And then I go back to my elbow that has the same thing, and I make sure that the weight for my FK is zeroed out, and I key that, and that my key on my IK elbow is set to 1. Now, when I go back to my switch on my FK-IK switch, I change it to FK, and I go back through my weights here. So back to this, back to my shoulder here, and I reverse them so that this is 1 and this is 0. And then I just select them here one at a time, and I key it here, and I key it here. And then I do the same on the elbow, and I just reverse it so that this is 1 and this is 0, and then I just select the elbow control here and I key them so that the weights are keyed, so that when I have my FK-IK switch on and I switch to IK, the weight here only drives these joints, so only the red joints are being moved. If I switch this back to FK, and that shows a little bit better of an example, and I move these forward, only the blue joints are being driven because I keyed the weight of my constraints. So the weights are getting keyed on and off. And then the next thing I did to finish this was select my controls here and my joints here from my shoulders. So is this left side? Yeah. And then left side shoulder joints, FK and IK. And I added those to my what's being driven. So the switch itself is the driver. So the actions of this FK-IK switch right here are driving the actions of the keys on my visibility here. So easy way to make sure that this is set is that right now my FK-IK switch on the left side is showing me as FK. So I'm going to make sure that my left FK visibilities are all on here. So the visibility there, that's on. And then my IKs, I'm actually going to select my IK visibility and turn that off. And my IK control joints, I'm going to turn that visibility off so that goes away, as you can see. And then I'm going to go through each of these for the visibility and just key them. And you have to make sure that when you select this section, you also select the visibility or what you want keyed. Otherwise, you won't set the key. And then down to this last one and key it. And then I go back up here and I first select this and then this section and I turn my FK back to IK and I go back to my visibility here and I just go through and I reverse it. And you have the option to key right when you do it, or you can go through and reverse them all at once. So they get turned on and this gets turned off. And then I can just go back and, oops, I forgot to select that visibility and key it, and then key that. And then the last one I get keyed, just like that. So now my FK-IK switch on this works and turns on and off the controls that I want. And then the visibility that's there, that gets moved through. So that's all that's moving. So, and then I will switch this one to IK as well. So I have both of these. Not quite sure. Oh, because I had my switch selected.
Is the wrist, I mean the wrist moves with both controls, but is it really just connected to the
It's only connected to the bind.
bind?
So what's happening is that my constraints are actually moving my bind, not the other way around. And they were sharing the weight, and now my FK-IK switch transfers that weight and shifts it back between 1 and 0. So that's about it.
Okay. How do I connect the wrists?
How do you connect what?
The wrist joints?
Are they not already connected to your bind?
They're not. They're connected to they're not.
What?
They're not.
They're not connected to the bind.
Correct.
So the wrist end here, your hands aren't bound. So if you look, let's see where they are in here. You have your wrist.
Yeah.
You don't have this point constraint to the end of the wrist. So in this, because I've got a lot in here, let me collapse these down.
It's not constrained to the wrist hand.
Okay, let me collapse these down just so I can show you what we've got in here. So this is your wrist for this side, and then you have your shoulder bind right here. So this is your parent, this is your child, and you point constraint just to that, and that's it. That's all you do to create that. I already have that, so I'm not going to do it again.
I choose the wrist end first.
Wrist end first, and then this, so that they get put together. Because the constraint that's on here, pretty sure, yeah, the constraint that's on here is this point constraint on the bind. Okay, I'm going to stop this video.